Uh-oh, okay. Got it.
All right, folks, welcome to Beginners Academy. We have a audience here on Zoom, um, and we meet on Monday nights, and we have a talk about every other Monday. And tonight, our talk is on the 10-meter band, and we're going to talk about having fun on 10 meters and also a review of my experience on the ARRL 10-meter contest, which was this past weekend. So that was a lot of fun. And I saw somebody posted, there's no meter like 10 meters or something like that. So, so we'll get into it. All right, a bit of a review. Here are the 10-meter band amateur privileges. 10 meters references a band that starts at 28 megahertz and goes up to 29.7 megahertz. And the amateur privileges depend on your license class, and the novice and technician classes do have privileges on 10 meters. So we kind of have a mindset that HF is for general and above, but for 10 meters, novice class licensees can operate with a 200 watt PEP power limit, which shouldn't be a problem for most of us. And so give it consideration. Of course, my guidance for all technicians is to upgrade if they desire to, but it really opens up all the bands. Well, on HF bands, we have propagation via the ionosphere generally. And on the right-hand bottom is a little diagram of RF bouncing off the ionosphere. The ionosphere has several layers, and in particular, and for 10 meters propagations, it bounces off the F2 layer, which gives us a great range. One small caveat is that stations in maybe in your state and the next state over are skipped over, and that's called the skip zone. And but 10 meters, when it's open, you know, is capable of worldwide communications, and it's a blast. And generally, it's thought of as a daytime band because the sun will ionize. It will make this F2 layer stronger enough for the signals at 28 megahertz to bounce off of it. Otherwise, the signals are just going to go to outer space, which doesn't do us a lot of good. In the upper right hand, there's another propagation mode. It is sporadic E. So at the E layer, there can be these ionized clouds that float around. I think they're pretty hard to predict, but a 10 meter signal can bounce off those. and give you propagation in the daytime, maybe when the band's otherwise closed, and also at night. So we're not going to cover all the nuances of propagation, but we'll just take note that there are two different means of propagation. In the daytime in particular, 10 meters is affected by the sun. And you might find a gray line map useful. There are a lot of tools that will show you the gray line. And what I found on this past weekend, early in our morning, this picture doesn't reflect it exactly, but Europe may be in the sun and the United States is just, the sun is coming up. And at that time, the European DX is generally really good, and that proved out on this last weekend, that in the early morning we were getting European DX and South American DX, and actually nothing in the United States until it got a little later in the day. And also, as the day progresses, the gray line is going to move over, and Hawaii and Japan may be illuminated. In fact, it could be, the sun could be directly over Hawaii, which we still have some sun in the United States and maybe also in Japan. So that's a good time to reach Asia, Japan, and Hawaii. So anyway, it's said that the propagation on 10 meters follows the sun. A term that you have in propagation physics is called maximum usable frequency, or MUF. And the MUF changes based on the solar cycle, and MUF is maximum usable frequency. So if the MUF is above 28 megahertz, then that makes this F2 propagation possible on 10 meters. If the MUF is below 28 megahertz, then propagation, at least skywave or F2 propagation, won't be possible. So that applies to all the bands. Generally on 20, well, it varies. Let's just say that it depends, but that's a term you want to be aware of. A lot of different tools will give you the MUF. So a big factor in what the MUF is at a particular year, it varies by year. It's affected by the solar cycle. I guess in 2020, solar cycle 25 began, and this chart gives you the predicted consensus solar cycle, and it's a plot of sunspot numbers versus the year or the date. And the good news is that we're expecting the sunspot numbers to increase, and we're at the beginning of something here, and this is what is helping propagation on 10 meters big time. So this weekend was a big example that the band, it's not always open, but it opened up for the contest. So this is one of these concepts in ham radio that you see, you might not follow it immediately, but eventually it sinks in, all the implications of it. I like to look at this Eglin Air Force Base lonosonde output. Unfortunately, this was from like, well, it's from today, but the red lines are from yesterday. And I don't know why things are bouncing around so much. I don't think that's real. But basically, this gives you the critical frequency. That's where a signal that's going straight up will be bounced back from the ionosphere. So during the night, we're over here on the left, and that frequency is much lower, but during the day, it goes, if the solar cycle is in the right place, it goes up dramatically. So just assume those, we have a curve going up, kind of like a roller coaster here. And this is not the muff, but the muff usually turns out to be about 3 times the critical frequency, roughly, just as a rule of thumb. So this is basically telling us that the muff should be above 28 megahertz during the day. So, all right, well, this is a pretty dry looking slide, but we're talking about the 10-meter contest after the fact, but it's an ARRL contest in December, and it is very, very popular. It lasted 36 hours, but there's a limit on how much you can operate. But nevertheless, it's similar to many other contests. It does have a particular exchange. For example, my exchange was a RST, which was always 59 or 599, and my state, which was Alabama. DX stations had RST and the serial number. So there's a little variety in the exchange, but there's really a worldwide participation. And so this is just the details. And the main thing to know is what the exchange is, and then maybe decide how you're going to log your contacts if you want to keep a log. And for me, I chose the N3FJP 10-meter contest software. It's a download from the N3FJP site. And for a small amount of money, you can get a key for many. He has a program for every contest. And so you can get a key to unlock it. I think it's like $15 or less. So it's well worth the money. And this program knows all the rules, and it helps you. And we'll talk about, it calculates your score, and we'll talk about some more of those details as we go through. So anyway, you don't have to be a contester to participate in a contest, and I'm not really a contester.
I think you could put a plug-in for N3FJP. They're like $15 for each program. However,
Well,
if you buy like 4 programs for $60, you may as well buy the whole package, because it's like $55.
Yeah, actually, I think $15 will buy you a lot. You'll need to look it up, but,
yeah, but you can buy the whole thing for like $55, and every time he makes a new one, That's free.
Yeah,
It just goes into the box.
yeah.
You have a key that you use for all of them.
Well, what I like is on field day, N3FJP is operating, so you get to
Oh
work it.
yeah, I worked in before. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, there are other logging programs. N1MM is a favorite of contesters, and they have even more favorites to get their job done. But for winter field day, ARRL field day, you'll find just what you need with N3FJP. Go to their website. So my setup for the 10-meter contest, I'm operating from Dothan, Alabama at our home here. And my rig is an ICOM 7610, which is a contest radio. So I have to operate some contests, but it's a radio that's not too different from an ICOM 7300. It's very similar, but the bottom line is any rig you can get on 10 meters is really going to work for you. In my case, I have a antenna. It's myantennas.com 80 to 10 end-fed. It's 130 feet long. And fortunately, I have pine trees here on the property, and I've got mine up about 35 feet. But so I'm plugging the myantennas.com antenna. It has a 49-to-1 transformer, so you can build your own if you like. But I bought one, and we have a slide with more details. But really, I kind of had a question. I said, well, that's an 80 through 10 antenna. How well is that going to work on 10 meters? Do I need to maybe put a vertical? I have some verticals I could have used. But anyway, since the end-fed was already up, I used it, and I can't complain. One nicety about the 7610 is it has 2 receivers and 2 spectrum scopes, which you can put on the screen at one time. So the top spectrum scope, I've got, it tracks the VFO or my frequency, and it's you can set anything you want, but it's set to plus or minus 10 kc. So that's kind of a narrow view. And then the bottom spectrum scope has the whole band on it. So what I could see on the bottom scope was how busy it was on CW and how busy it was on phone. And as it was getting dark, I could see the phone was dying fast and CW was still going for a while longer. Anyway, that's just a nicety. It's not necessary to operate, but I did enjoy using that. The end-fed antenna has a transformer. I have the transformer pulled up to a limb on a pine tree. So my antenna drapes down from there. I got some slack in it for when these pine trees start swaying in the wind. So, but nevertheless, I've done a number of contests, and I just can't, I guess if I can hear them, I can work them. So I have to think that, for me, this is working out. For other people, they may not have room that much room. There is a 40/10 version, but actually in amateur radio, it's whatever the best antenna is, the antenna you have. So it's this worked out for me. And it's hard for me to say if it would be any different if I had used the vertical. But
And Greg, how
yes,
do they make it resonant on all those bands?
well, it's harmonics.
Okay.
And some of them may not be exactly harmonically related. So on those bands, it's magic.
Okay.
But
There's some kind of a coil in on the left side there, but
well,
didn't seem
actually
like
that
enough to get
coil
to
doesn't really,
7 bands, 8
that
bands.
coil doesn't do very much. It's really there if you want to do some fine tuning of this antenna. You can get some extra length with that coil. It really,
Oh, okay.
it doesn't do anything. So actually the situation here is this is not a random length antenna. It is 130 foot because that is a resonant half wave on 80 meters.
Yeah.
And if you have that situation, then there's like 2 half waves on 40 meters. And it's a nice consequence that it works on many bands. It says no tuner needed, and pretty much that's the case. I didn't need one on 10 meters. There's at least one band where it's more like 3-to-1 than 2-to-1, and I do use the tuner in the radio, but that's all I need to bring it in. So I'm not getting any kickback on this antenna, but I started out using it for field day, and I had room for it at field day and it worked. And then I chose to put it up here in the trees and it works fine. So I do have SWR curves that I could show at another time. So it's just, this is not necessarily the antenna to buy just to get on 10 meters. In fact, a simple dipole is only about 16 feet long on 10 meters, and that really would be sufficient. This just happens to be what I have. That covers a lot of bases. And one detail about these multi-band antennas, the radiation pattern is different on each band. And I'm not going to explain all the nuances of this, but as you can see on the left top, the radiation pattern is pretty funky looking. And it's actually kind of omnidirectional, except the maximum gain is along the wire at an angle to the wire, but it's not broadside. But nevertheless, I believe I was able to work stations in all directions, and pretty much if I could hear them, I could work them. So I can't complain. So don't let that funny looking pattern scare you. It seems to work fine. And this is from a guy that kind of modeled this kind of antenna, and you end up with a lot of current nodes on 80 meters. There might be one current node, but on 10 meters, there are 8. So you take that and put it in all to the form, it causes it to have a different kind of pattern. but useful nevertheless. So anyway, I don't know how to be a real contester, but I can have fun. There's kind of two ways to operate. One is called, I think it's running, which is get on one frequency and call CQ and listen for stations, work the stations, call CQ again. And apparently, a lot of people do that the entire contest. So, but for me, just having fun, I did search and pounce. And the contest was CW and SSB. It was helpful that I could choose either mode, and I would go back and forth between the modes. So I operated about 4 hours on Friday night, 7 hours on Saturday, and 6 hours on Sunday, roughly. 10 meters, you wouldn't necessarily expect it to be open at night, but it was open to 11:30 on Friday night. And but one interesting thing, for the most part, it was just open to New England and New York. So, and it may have been sporadic E, but I can't swear to that. But it was open at night. And Saturday and Sunday were more the traditional thinking. It was open starting in, after the sun came up, and about 5:30, it just faded out. And so, and like I said, it turned out in the early morning, pretty much DX was all I could find. However, I had called the band dead, but then I went back and listened, and there were some Caribbean stations on at night, a couple of them. So that's all, just a couple of stations. So you never know. You never know. There's general patterns, but every year could be different. And if this was the solar minimum, there might not be any opening, but it's a joke. If there's a contest, there tends to be something going on. So we'll see. All righty. Well, I was a single operator. There's categories, mixed mode, which is CW and sideband, low power. And there are different categories, and we won't go through them all, but there's high power categories. But I had a lot of fun. I got 133 CW contacts and 121 sideband, and we'll talk about the multipliers maybe in the next slide. So anyway, but multipliers are important because they can really boost your score. Now, the next slide is going to show that I am not a contester. Okay. There's a website that people post their scores before the official scores come out. They can post them right after a contest since they know what their score is. But so as you can see, my 254 contacts was exceeded by many of these guys who are real serious contesters, and in particular K4 Alpha Bravo. I don't know how he did it. I don't know, but he is one of the best contesters around. All these scores are from the Alabama contest group. And anyway, he had 2,207 QSOs. and 2 million points. So, but anyway, it's about having fun, and 10 QSOs may be fun, and you can just stop right there, or you can just keep going and rack them up. I am a member of the contest group, even though I'm not a contester, and I have one thing going for me, and that is my category, single operator, mixed, low power. The big guys don't use that one. So if nobody else shows up, I might have a chance. But anyway, I don't, but this is something, this style of operating is something that kind of grows on you, and some people it grows on, some it doesn't, but I had fun with it.
Is low power 100 watt?
100 or under.
Under, okay, all right.
Yeah. And there's actually, there's a assisted, you can be assisted or not assisted. I think that's using spotting tools and things. I didn't use any of those, so I was in the unassisted. That's part of my category.
Okay, on here, the blue ones are the ones you work.
Yeah. Now, somebody has a TV going, but the logging software will keep up with your multipliers in real time. So if I'm in CW mode, it gives me this screen, and if I've worked a state on CW, it turns blue, I think it is. And so for this, states were multipliers. So, and it turns out that states in Mexico were multipliers. I had 4 Mexican states, and countries are multipliers. So, so in the final calculation, you add up all your points. There's a multiplier on the points, but that's different per mode. But anyway, you add up the multipliers, do the multiplication, and you get the final score. But increasing your multiplier will, it basically takes all your points and multiplies it by another number. So it adds those points to the total. So multipliers are very powerful. Now, it turns out due to that skip zone that I had basically no contacts. Well, it's, in the nearby states, and however, there was an exception that I worked somebody about 60 miles away, N4II. And if you look up his QRZ, he's near Bluntstown. And if you look up his page, he has a huge antenna farm that is awesome. So, so I lucked out and did work Florida. That was just by luck. But the states that further away did better, and the DX did better. So anyway, this adds up to a multiplier of 50 something. All right. Phone, it's the same screen, but this is for phone contacts. And I was lucky to get, I heard a fellow ham here in Dothan, and he was working somebody, and I moved over a little bit and started calling CQ, and then he found me. So So I got Alabama as a multiplier. But anyway, I'll just tell you that anytime I can work Alaska and Hawaii, it makes my day. So I had several contacts with Alaska and Hawaii. And so that's
Well,
all I
also-
really needed to do.
I think equally impressive that you got Manitoba and Saskatchewan.
These Canadians are really into this stuff. They're into 10
Wow.
meters.
Yeah, all 4 of them. Like, if you've
Well-
driven through Saskatchewan, you'll realize how difficult that really is.
Yeah.
Other than the cattle, there's not many people live.
Well, yeah, these provinces
Yeah,
are sparse.
less
And-
folks than Montana.
Yeah. So it's always cool to work the Canadians in those provinces.
Yeah.
And it's cool to work DX. And I was surprised. I hope I don't get in trouble, but I worked Ukraine. You know, they might throw that contact out because they're not supposed to operate. Last I heard. But
Really?
yeah,
That's what I heard as well.
yeah. But anyway, there was
There's a lot of them operating on eBay from Ukraine.
business is going on.
Yeah.
That's
Greg,
right.
Hey, Greg,
Yes, Ken.
Ken, I have worked a number of Ukraine stations
Yeah.
in the last several months. Most of them on QRZ, they say no, they wipe out their address. They don't give their address.
Yeah.
But there are Ukrainians operating.
Well, who's saying that they shouldn't be on the air? Is that the Russians?
The
or
president of or whatever.
I don't
of
know
Ukraine?
The
who said-
CEO of Ukraine.
I don't
Really?
know who
Yeah.
said what they are.
I
Well-
would think he want them to be on to sort of spread the word of what's going on. Like that's the whole thing
Yeah.
is PR, isn't it?
Well, actually, as we look at history, in the United States, they shut down amateur radio in World War I and II because the
Mhm.
concern of spies communicating and things like that. So, well, you know, it is what it is. At first, we thought we wouldn't hear from Ukraine, but we are. Now, I didn't work any Russians, so I'm
There you go.
okay.
They're too busy digging trenches.
Okay.
All the Russians left the country.
Well, it could be. All right. So anyway, this was my final multiplier. So it's 50 something for each mode. And so I found a way to map the contacts, and this is kind of North America. And like I say, what's so interesting is, yeah, you cover all this ground, but it's at different times of day. And you can tell that it's changing as the contest goes along. And also, well, so Friday night, it was New England and New York. And that's all it was. And it started spreading out a little bit. And then the next day, in the morning, it was DX. And then later in the day, it was California. Here we come. And I hate to be a ham in California because you're just one of hundreds, thousands of hams there. So,
When did Puerto Rico come in the most?
actually, I don't claim to have perfect memory, but I think the morning and the middle of the day, Puerto Rico was well represented.
There's a lot of guys down there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good.
They probably have a great score. down
They
there. But
they're real active, and they're all pro.
yeah,
Pro hurricanes and stuff, things like
Yeah.
that.
well, you have to wonder, I had 200 contacts, but Larry in North Alabama had 2,000 contacts. So I missed, he must have worked everybody that was on.
How is this map plotted? Did you pick it out, or does it do it automatically? Or
Well, I found a site called QSO Maps,
yeah,
and I uploaded the log there, and you have to register if your log doesn't have the lat longs, you have to register. And so they, it's a lot of work to keep up that site. So I did donate $10, but actually it did something interesting. It takes all the contacts and it checks them against QRZ, and that's how it finds their location. And then it plots their location on the map.
what if they're transmitting out of their region?
Well, it won't catch that.
Okay,
So,
yeah,
but for most people that we assume they're home QTH, but they don't have to be. So yeah, there could be some errors due to that. Okay, well, the next slide is a world map. So, so South America was good. Hawaii and Alaska, a couple of different stations in Alaska. And, I got a kick out of getting a Japan. Now you might get on FT8 and work Hawaii, Alaska, and Japan every day, but for me, this was a good time to do it because they were on. And also Nambia in Africa. That's kind of new for me. So anyway, my antenna is not the only antenna that will do this, but if my antenna does this, should I really want more? It kept me entertained for the weekend. But probably a hex beam antenna would be great. A vertical would be great. But anyway, things were working.
I brought my vertical down from Cleveland, and I just hooked it up to my post of my cyclone fence, and it's doing a good job.
Yeah. Verticals are great.
I don't have,
And they don't they take up vertical space, but not
Yeah.
so much horizontal space. So
I don't have any radios other than the cyclone fence, and I've been hitting all
Yeah.
different directions.
okay. Well, here's the takeaway. I encourage everybody to take advantage of 10 meters while solar conditions are favorable. And they certainly were this last weekend, and they're only going to get better for a while. So the band will be open more reliably as time goes on. 10 meters is pretty high in frequency. So the antenna dipole, I think, is only about 16 feet long. So you can build your own dipole and pretty much put that up anywhere. And a vertical quarter wave would only be about 8 feet. It is available to all classes of hams. And it's especially fun during contests. So we can make use of 10 for winter field day and any other contest that's coming along. And as always, FT8 is popular on 10 meters. And if the band's open, there's going to be some kind of FT8, but they're kind of rewriting the rules because FT8 can work when people would not think the band would be open. But all right, well, at this point, do we have any questions or further comments? Maybe
Hey,
about
Greg.
contesting or 10 meters or antennas?
Hey, Greg. this is
Yes, Ken.
I have been, of course, you know, I'm a 99% FT8 guy. And I have a hex beam antenna, and 10 meters has just been hopping all over the world. And I've got new countries, particularly down in the band of Western Africa. And so
Yeah.
it's, I spend more time on 10 meters lately than
Yeah.
any other band.
Well, that's awesome. Take advantage. You know, these solar cycles are, there's good time and bad times. And and also, Ken, I think a hex beam would be, is an excellent antenna. And covers multiple bands, and it's resonant, and 10 meters is usually one of those bands. So, yeah. All right. Any other questions? Well, or comments? All right. Well, I thank you for your attention. Like I say, I'm not a contester, but you don't have to be a contester to participate. The winners are very few, and even the serious contesters don't win. That Larry, I looked at all the scores. There was one score better than him. So, in another country, but anyway. All right. Well, we thank you for attention. We'll put this on YouTube, and hopefully it'll be helpful for more folks.
Thank you, Greg.
All right. You're
Thank
welcome.
Thanks, Greg.
Thank you.
Yeah, very
Good
good.
job, Greg.
Hey, Greg.